Commanders hire Dan Quinn to match with their new general manager, Adam Peters, to lead this franchise into the future.
The way that we live is not for everybody, okay? It's not, all right? Because we're going to run and put our bodies on people in a violent manner.
Whether the team is giving us the highest of highs or the blues of blues, we'll cover it all here on Commanders Nightly News. I, of course, am your host, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. Let's get to tonight's lead story. So the 3-game losing streak is over. Hallelujah. The Commanders emphatically end the losing streak with the 42-19 thrashing of the Tennessee Titans on Sunday. It was so needed. We talked about that on the post-game show. I talked about it again on the day after reaction. Hopefully you had a chance to check that out. I did that a little earlier today. Actually did two, one for Bleacher Report and one on my own. They hit me up a little bit later on in the day. I was like, well, hell, I already did it. I might as well post that as well. But when it's all said and done, we needed that win in the worst way. And you could see the relief on the face of the players, the staff. You could hear it in their voices. It was good to see them having fun again. It was the way that we needed to go into that bye. And DQ talked about this in his press conference. We'll react to that a little bit later on in the show, but you could feel it. You could feel it against teams like Philadelphia and Dallas in particular, that this team was running on fumes. He said the tank was on E for a lot of the players in the locker room. The tank was on E for this team. You go 13 weeks without a bye, without any kind of break, and you're running on fumes. And for the team to come out and perform the way that they did in this game and get the win, and I thought it was really important for them to jump on Tennessee early, not allow this to be a dogfight, really take it to the Titans early and establish who was the alpha in this game, establish their dominance. Hey, we're the team chasing after a playoff berth, not you, and allow that to be the narrative that creeps into Tennessee's head. We didn't even get out of the first quarter, and it was 21-0, and it was 28-0 early stages of the second. Before they could even get settled into the game, they were out of it. That's what you want to do to a bad team. Now you got them thinking about, do I really want to even play in this cold weather? Do I even want to be here? Let's see if we can't get it next week against Jacksonville. We ain't winning this game, right? That's what you want them thinking. We didn't do that to Dallas, and we had opportunities to do it, and we didn't. So it was refreshing to see them get back to the basics and get to the things that we knew needed to be done in order to achieve victory against a team that was a lesser opponent coming into the game. And so Commanders are now 8-5. They hold the 7th seed in the NFC playoff picture right now as it stands. And nothing can change in terms of their playoff status while on this bye. So that's a good thing. They've created enough space with this win, coupled with a loss by Arizona in particular, to create enough space now that there is no other team chasing after them with 7 wins right now. Now, obviously that can change post-bye. Arizona will have a game here while, the Commanders are on a bye week. We'll talk more about this in a later show this week, probably on the Tuesday show. But in any event, you're the 7th seed. And how we achieved this victory, let's get to the keys to victory, which, as you can tell, they followed. And I've told you guys this, especially over this 3-game skid that we were on. I curate these keys specifically to each week and the opponent that we're playing. And some of them are redundant, right? Because these are things you have to do no matter the opponent. And some are specific to the opponent we're playing because this is how they get down. This is how we have to get down in order to achieve victory. So they hadn't been following the keys to victory. Hence, 0-3 in the last 3 contests up until Sunday's game, where they followed the keys to victory to a T, and you see the outcome, right? So let's get to it. First offensive key for the Commanders going into this game was remain balanced, convert on 3rd downs, win time of possession, And in parentheses, I put no less than 45% third down conversion rate in the game. Okay. So we remained balanced in this game. Jaden Daniels had 30 passing attempts. I think we ended up with 40 some odd rushes, which is what we want, right? That's the balance we're looking to achieve. I thought when we had our worst quarter and the little lull that we experienced in the third quarter was because we didn't remain balanced, right? The balance got out of whack, and there were penalties too. Like that first possession of the second half was penalty laden, and it destroyed the drive before it even had a chance to get started. But we weren't balanced in the third quarter. That was the reason that the Titans were able to kind of, I don't want to say sneak their way back into the game, but they were able to make things slightly uncomfortable for a brief period there before we got back to business in the fourth quarter and reestablished our dominance in this game. So remaining balanced is a big thing for us. And I've always talked about Brian Robinson Jr.'s impact on that. When we don't have him, you can see that there isn't the same level of confidence in the run game. Cliff isn't as confident calling the runs. The offensive line isn't as confident blocking up the runs. It's just a different energy and atmosphere when Brian Robinson Jr. is in the lineup, and they were balanced today. The play calls kind of showed that. And I talked about converting on third downs. That's a big thing for us. When we were rolling early in the season, we were one of the best third down teams in the league. We got back to that today. 9 of 14 the Commanders were on Sunday versus the Titans. That's 64% or something along those lines. I asked for 45. They gave me 64. I love it. Want more of it, right? Win time of possession, we dominated. We didn't just win. We dominated time of possession in a way that we hadn't all season long. We had 40 minutes of time of possession, over 40 minutes, to the Titans 19 minutes and 37 seconds. I mean, we absolutely dominated this game in time of possession, and we'll see that when we get to the snap counts for the week. I mean, some of these numbers are just absurd, right? We haven't seen these numbers all season long. It was by far and away the most dominant performance of the season. I know that Panthers game was close to being a shutout, was 40-7. It was never in doubt, all of that good stuff. I don't think we actually got to enjoy that one because of Jaden's situation that game. I don't think we actually got to enjoy that one and got to bask in the dominance that was that performance. This one, we got to enjoy it start to finish. Now, there was a little brief period there where things got a little interesting, maybe a little bit more interesting than we would have liked it to, but this was a dominant performance by the Commanders through and through, right? Next offensive key, obviously they got a point there, right? Next offensive key, at least 4 trips to the red zone and 3 need to result in touchdowns. The Commander said, I'll do you one better. Instead of 4 trips to the red zone, how about 7? How's that sound? And instead of your 3 touchdowns you asked for, how about 5? Sounds pretty good to me. So you had 5 red zone touchdowns. The 6th touchdown, because we scored 6 touchdowns in this game. The 6th touchdown, which was the first one of the game, came outside the red zone on the 40-yard Brian Robinson touchdown run. So we were efficient. We were consistent. And I've said this, when we get out of our own way in the red zone, when we steer clear of penalties and mistakes, when we run the football in the red zone, I don't think we can be stopped once we get inside the 5. Between Jaden Daniels' legs, Brian Robinson's power when he's healthy, this offensive line, and Terry McLaurin as a weapon on the slant, right? Which is what he's done a couple of times this season as well. And Zach Ertz as well. Like, let's not forget about Ertz and his ability to win inside on slants. With the ability of these guys to make plays in the run game and Jaden's legs, I feel like we're impossible to stop inside the 5-yard line. We just have to get inside the 5. And I think it's a touchdown every time. And I feel like it's been that way every time this season. I can't think of a time where we got inside the 5, didn't have a penalty, and didn't walk away with 7, right? I can't think of one single time. Whether we're throwing a touchdown to Trent Scott, throwing a touchdown to Terry McLaurin or Zach Ertz, or we're running it in with B-Rob, Austin Eckler, Jeremy McNichols, or Jaden Daniels. We're getting in the end zone once we get inside the 5. And we did that quite a bit in this football game. Of course, we got a check mark there in 1 point. Protect Jaden and the Duke. Half point here, right? Half point here. Jaden was sacked twice, so that's not bad, right? I did fumble on one of those, which you don't want to see, but we recovered it. And then we had the one turnover. Jaden threw the interception. I thought it was a ball that was catchable, but it was high. I'll say that. It was high, but I thought it was also catchable by Zach Ertz off his fingers. And a great job by Amani Hooker of just finding a way to get to the football and make a diving stab. But all in all, they did a pretty good job on both fronts, but it wasn't good enough to get the full check. Like, we got to be better in the turnover category. This should have been four forced turnovers to none on our end, right? We should have been taking it away 4 times and giving it away none. That's the type of game that this should have been. And instead, it was 2-1. And it's got to be better. We got to be better. So half point there. Bring back the explosive plays. I said 4 plays of 20 yards or more was what I was looking for. Didn't quite get that. Got 3 plays of 20 yards or more in the game. The B-Rob run of 40 yards. Chris Rodriguez had a 25-yard run. Zach Ertz had a 25-yard catch. So we had 3 plays of such yardage. But here's the great equalizer here that balances it all out, makes it even better. We had 10 plays overall in the game of 10 yards or more, something that we just had lacked here over this 3-game skid. I really want to take Pittsburgh out of that mix. Really, the last 2 weeks against Philadelphia and against Dallas, we were just lacking in the explosive play department, just getting chunk plays, eating up a 10th of the field, right? With just 10 yards is a 10th of the field. If you start at the 1-yard line and you get a 10-yard gain, that's a 10th of the field. And we weren't even doing that, right? We weren't even doing that. We weren't even getting plays that were netting us 10 yards at a time the last 2 weeks, which was just difficult to watch this offense struggle in that regard. Not the case in this game. We had 6 such runs of 10 yards or more in this game. We had, as I just talked about, several catches over 20 yards, a bunch of catches over 10 yards. And that's what we need. We need more of that, right? So to have 10 plays or more of 10 yards or more, excellent. It's what we're looking for. I'd like to see the 20-yard plays be up to 4 or 5, but you go with 3 of those and you get about 12 plays of 10 yards or more. I'll take that. I'll take that any day. So bring back the explosive plays. They did that in this game. Started off with the bang with the B-Rob 40-yard touchdown run and really never looked back. So they got a full point there as well. Now you transition to the defensive keys and you start with the first one. Slow down the Titans' rushing attack. I said 123 yards or less for the Titans. We had been giving up on average on the season 145 yards on the ground, which was, I think, good for 3rd worst in the NFL coming into the game. Well, that average has been helped tremendously. Now, granted, I think the Titans would have had some success on the ground. They were clearly making a concerted effort to attack our edges early in the game. I don't think they ran up the middle, maybe but once or twice early in the game. Most of their runs were on the perimeter, and they were having success. Tony Pollard, I think he had 8 carries for 34 yards, something to that effect. But the run game became non-existent when you're down 21-0 at the end of 1 and 28-0 early stages of the second. The run game becomes a non-factor at that point. So they got away from the run because of the big lead that was built, which is a benefit to us because, again, our run defense has been the biggest issue this team has had this season. Defensively, they only rushed for 35 yards on 11 carries, did the Tennessee Titans. So that's going to help bring that number down significantly. And let's hope that we can finish this season off on an up note, on a high note, rather, on an uptick in terms of run defense. We're going to be tested, right? Got the Eagles in a couple of weeks. Saints are going to want to try to run the football. Falcons, that's what they have to do to be successful. We'll be tested. And if we don't take care of business, it'll rear its ugly head again. But it was good to see them stop the run in this game. And it really was aided by the big lead in the defense and the special teams creating turnovers, the offense using those turnovers to turn them into points and really taking that pressure off of the defense. Big check mark there. That's huge for us, not allowing the Titans to run the football. Ball is life. Special teams be nice was the next defensive key. Ball was life. 2 forced turnovers. I felt a special teams turnover coming. We had forced so many fumbles on special teams this year, and just the recovery had eluded us. Finally, we were able to pounce on one. I was hypercritical of Tyler Owens last week with his extremely soft block. Well, I'm going to be nice. His extremely soft block on the punter last week, or the placeholder, that allowed the block punt to not go for a touchdown. He redeemed himself this week with a forced fumble on the kickoff that was recovered by Michael Walker. So a good, big way to redeem yourself if you're rookie Tyler Owens making that play. So the special teams was definitely nice in that regard. Did miss the 2 field goals, but again, weren't a big deal because of the way that the game ultimately went. But that's something that definitely needs to be cleaned up moving forward when we play better opponents. But forcing 2 turnovers, having special teams be a part of that was huge. And obviously we get a check mark there. Limit the explosive plays was something that was big. The Titans came into this game as a team here of late that was creating a bunch of explosive plays, and that continued in this game. Very disappointed in the big plays given up. Gave up the big touchdown right before the half. Gave up a 3rd and like 22 completion for 30 yards to Calvin Ridley. Ridley was open again, and Will Levis and Ridley couldn't connect over the middle. Ridley was open again. I don't know how Benjamin St-Juste was turned loose one-on-one with Calvin Ridley. I don't know who thought that was a good idea, but he was slightly overshot on that play. And so we dodged a couple of bullets, but we gave up some big plays in this game. Tony Pollard had a big catch and run over the middle of the field for 30 yards. So that's something that we have to clean up. A little sloppy with the zone coverage. Our zone coverage is way too loose. Guys are running way too wide open, and guys aren't carrying players through their zone. They're just kind of guarding grass. They've got to be better in their zone drops of connecting to receivers running through their zone. And when we go one-on-one, guys have to stay connected to receivers. We didn't do a good enough job of that in this game either. So half point there on limiting the explosive. We gave up 3 explosive plays in this game. Luckily enough, they weren't critical in it, and there weren't more, to be honest with you. And then lastly, 4 quarters of relentless energy that results in less than 20 points given up. This was huge. And I talked about it on Friday's show. I said this one was going to be big because in order to dominate a bad team, I've always told you that the score is important. First and foremost, you need to score points as an offense. Special teams, defense, however you score them, it doesn't matter. Just score them, because bad teams don't score a lot of points. That is a given. It is a tried, tested, and true method in the NFL. I don't care how long you go back. You want to chart a bad team, generally, go look at how many points they're scoring. They're going to be outliers every now and again, like the Cincinnati Bengals, for instance, this year. They're a 4-win team. They're probably averaging close to 30 points a game this season, and they're giving up over 30 points a game this season. They're horrible in the defensive department. However, most bad teams are averaging less than 20 points a game. The Titans fit in that category. The Cowboys fit in that category the week before, and I made it abundantly clear. If you want to beat a bad team, just score points. They can't keep up. It's what I said about the Giants the 2 times we played them. Hey, just score points. The Giants can't keep up. The first game of the season, the first Giants game of the season, rather, we almost lost that game. Why? Because we didn't score points. We kicked 7 field goals, and that allowed a Giants team that's averaging less than 20 points a game to hang in there and almost steal the game. The second time we scored 27, they couldn't keep up, right? You want to beat a bad team, score points. That's why Cleveland couldn't keep up. That's why Carolina couldn't keep up. Bad teams don't score points. The Titans don't score points. And we put up 28 in the first quarter and a half. They were done. They weren't scoring 28 points in this game, right? And I'm glad the defense was able to make sure that they didn't even hit 20. They tried to go for 2. They didn't get it. Keep them under 20. Keep them under 20. They hit 19 points 4 quarters of relentless energy. We got that from this team. They never let up. There was a little bit of a malaise in the third quarter, but even then, the defense was able to clamp down and only give up field goals, right? If they give up touchdowns, it's a totally different game. They give up field goals. They played with that relentless energy the entire day, and that led to a 42-19 beatdown. Really proud of them for holding that energy up for 4 quarters. Would have been very easy for them to let go of the rope up 28-0 and say, we got this in the bag. That's a 3-8 we should be good. But they didn't do that. They finished the job. And that's what good teams do. So full check mark there. So when you total the keys to victory up, 3.5 out of 4 on the offensive side, 3.5 out of 4 on the defensive side, it's a total of 7. Not only are you not going to lose many games doing that, you're going to win convincingly if you do that. Every time they've hit 7 or more on the keys to victory this season, we've won going away. Carolina, Cleveland, Arizona, this game, you hit the amount of keys that we did in those games, you're going to get the result that we got in this game for the most part. Really proud of the fellas for going out and taking care of business in the manner that they did. Heading into a bye week, knowing that they were tired, knowing that that bye was very necessary, still taking care of the task at hand. Really proud of them taking care of business. So let's transition to in other news. We heard from Dan Quinn on his Victory Monday press conference. It's the last time we'll hear from DQ for over a week. We won't hear from him until next Monday as the team is hitting their bye week, a much-needed bye week. So we'll talk about what DQ had to say here in a bit, but before we do that, let's take a look at the snap counts for this game, and they are alarming. It tells the story of the sheer dominance that took place in this game on both sides of the football. And so the first thing that should jump out at you are these offensive snaps. 83 offensive snaps in a game is wild, okay? Obviously, it's a season high for the Commanders. I don't know if I've seen that many offensive snaps from this team in quite a while. I mean, you probably got to go back maybe 3 or 4 years to have a game where you dominated at that big of a clip to where you had that many plays on offense. I wonder how many plays we had against Carolina, but it doesn't feel like it was in the 80s. It didn't feel like it was that many snaps. That's a lot of offensive snaps. And it's good to see the entire offensive line, because normally it seems like with us when we do these offensive snaps, somebody on the offensive line had to come out of the game for some reason. And even if it was a short amount of time, somebody had to come out and they didn't play all whatever amount of snaps. Well, all 5 guys played the 83 snaps, and then Jaden Daniels also. I thought they were going to let him come out. I thought Marcus Mariota was one of the game captains because we was playing his former team, the Tennessee Titans. And I thought that they'd let him finish this game off. Jaden at one point didn't have his helmet on. Mariota did. And so it felt like it was like the last possession. I thought they would just let Marcus come in and let him finish it off, but they didn't let him do it. I thought they would, but they didn't. So Jaden had all 83 snaps. Terry McLaurin, as you know, per usual, 66 snaps, 80% of the snaps. He usually is the next highest snap count percentage-wise guy on the offense after you get past the quarterback in the offensive line, and that was the case in this game. Ertz, 55 snaps. That's a lot of snaps for him. 66%. John Bates, this was a big, 12 personnel type of game. So as you can see, a lot of snaps for the tight ends. Bates, that's a very high, inordinate amount of snaps for him. But it was the type of game it was. You rush for 267 yards. You run it over 40 times. That's the end result. You're going to need those big guys on the field. And hats off to John Bates and Zach Ertz and Ben Sinnott. They did yeoman-like work in this game. 53 snaps for John Bates. De'Ami Brown. This was, I don't want to call it a coming out party, but De'Ami Brown, loves when he sees the Tennessee Titans. He was as involved in this game as he had been all season long in any game. Remember, his career high game came against these same Titans 2 years ago in 2022, when he caught the 2 long touchdown passes. He was targeted, 4 times in this game? If I'm not mistaken. I think he had 3 or 4 catches. He also had the little jet sweep play that they did to him, like a little reverse type action. So he was a part of the game plan. It was good to see. And maybe some of that was facilitated by Noah Brown's injury. And maybe he had to come in and play a little bit more. But it was just good to see. Before he even got hurt, De'Ami was a part of the game plan. It was good to see because I think De'Ami Brown has a chance to be an impact player. Remember, I was asked last week who was a player off the radar that could step up on both the offensive and defensive sides. And I said, De'Ami Brown. I think he's got, something that he can offer that other guys on this team can't, and that's the ability to stretch the field vertically. And also, he's just dynamic with the ball in his hands. We don't have a lot of dynamic guys with the ball in their hands. He's one of the few on this roster, which is why I always advocate for throwing him wide receiver screens, which they did in this game, which I also am a very, very big fan of. Brian Robinson Jr., 39 snaps. It was good to see him have the impact he had early, kind of give us that juice, and then them pull the reins back. Remember, he was not fully healthy, right? He gave it a go despite spraining his ankle a week ago. We thought his season was over. This man played 7 days later. That's a testament to him, the staff for getting him prepared to play. But I love the fact that he was huge early, gave us the spark that we needed, and then he kind of took a step to the side and allowed other guys to kind of carry the momentum that he helped create early on in the game. I love that they scaled him back, got him to the bye week finish line healthy, and now he's going to have full 2 weeks, essentially, all of next week and then the week leading up to the Saints game to get back to health. We need him down this stretch. He's a huge part of the offense, as you can blatantly and clearly see. So it's good to see him not have to carry the shoulder or carry the burden of being the bell cow, right? He got his 13, 14 carries, 16 carries, I believe it was total, and got out of there, right? Noah Brown had the injury. We still are awaiting an update. He did not return to the game. He played 38 snaps, and then I don't know if it was a concussion, if it was a hip pointer, but we need him healthy too, right? Hopefully it's nothing serious. Same with Quan Martin. We know his is a shoulder. He did return to the game, but that doesn't mean he's okay. So we just need, all these guys need to rest, right? And hopefully Noah Brown's is very insignificant. I always get nervous when a guy walks to the locker room and doesn't come back. Cornelius Lucas walked to the locker room, didn't come back against the Eagles, and not the Eagles, excuse me, against the, I want to say it was, was it the Steelers? I want to say it was this. No, it wasn't the Steelers. It was before that. I want to say it was the Bears. And we didn't see him again, right? He was out for like a month. So I get nervous when guys walk to the locker room. But hopefully it's nothing serious for Noah Brown. Olamide Zaccheaus, 29 snaps, 35%. Luke McCaffrey, 24, 29%. Ben Sinnott, 24 snaps. Chris Rodriguez did human-like work. In 23 snaps, he had 13 carries for 94 yards. So he was extraordinary in his limited exposure. And then Jeremy McNichols, I thought, played really well in his 21 snaps as well. He was really good. I like Jeremy McNichols. He's made a believer out of me. Remember, I was not a Jeremy McNichols guy in the offseason. When we signed him, thought he was just a placeholder, thought he was nothing more than a guy that may be able to offer you a little bit of special teams play, but he's sold me on his value here, and I wouldn't mind having him back next year. I wouldn't mind him. Chris Rodriguez is starting to win me over. Still think you got to add another back. So if you're comfortable with 4 backs, I'm comfortable with keeping Chris Rodriguez and Jeremy McNichols next year. But you got to, and I know Austin Eckler signed a 2-year deal, but if you can draft a guy with some speed, I'm willing to move on from Eck. And I love everything that he's done. And Eck may not be done contributing here, right? He's on IR, but there's a chance he could be back before the end of the season. But I want to upgrade the speed on this team from a running back position. But that's another conversation for another day. You guys know how I feel about that. So we go from the offensive snaps to the defensive snaps. And just like I talked about with the offensive snaps being an outlier, 55 snaps on the defensive side is an outlier. Now, we've had games where there haven't been a ton of defensive snaps because we've dominated them. The Cleveland game, there wasn't a bunch of defensive snaps. The Carolina game, I don't think there were a ton of defensive snaps, but 55 is a really low number. Generally in the NFL, you're going to have 61, anywhere from 61 to 70 defensive snaps in a game, right? You're rarely going to find 60 or less. To have 55 defensive snaps speaks to our dominance on both the defensive and offensive side. We got off the field on third downs for the most part. I thought we could have been a little bit better on third downs, but we got off the field for the most part on third downs, and our offense sustained itself to the tune of 40-20 in the time of possession, which kept the defense essentially fresh and off the field. So it's great to see these numbers and the disparity between offensive snaps and defensive snaps. That's a winning recipe for us. Jeremy Chin, Mike Sainristil, Bobby Wagner, Frankie Louvu played all 55 snaps in this game, which has become a trend. And normally Quan Martin would be in there as well, but obviously he sustained the injury and came out for a brief period before coming back in. But he's usually among the group that doesn't come off the field. Noah Igbenogany, 53 snaps, which shows you his value, right? Again, normally when he's not on the field, we're in some sort of base where we don't have, the nickel package. You have the big nickel or the Buffalo nickel where you bring in that extra safety. Percy Butler usually comes in there. You bring Jeremy Chin down closer to the box and because you expect to run, right? Noah Igbenogany, because we were up so big, so fast, the Titans pretty much had to go to 3 wide, bring that extra, receiver onto the field, which meant Noah Igbenogany pretty much lived on the field in nickel in this game, as you can see by the 53 snaps. So you see his importance. And again, I think this also speaks to, if you look at Mike Sainristil and Noah Igbenogany's snap counts in this game, it also speaks to what's going to happen when you get a healthy Marshawn Lattimore, which we are assuming will be in Week 15 versus the New Orleans Saints. Noah Igbenogany and Mike Sainristil aren't coming off the field. Benjamin St-Juste is coming off the field, which is the right thing to do. We talked about that a month ago when we traded for him. That's the right thing to do. But I think it's been solidified over this stretch here that Sainristil and Igbenogany need to be on the field. Benjamin St-Juste does not. So as you keep going, Quan Martin, 49 snaps, had to sustain the shoulder injury, was able to come back into the game a little bit later on. So that was a good sign. 89% of the snaps. Benjamin St-Juste, as I just mentioned, 47 snaps, which he wasn't that far off. But again, he's a guy that I think they really understand what his role is. And I told you, he's still a vital part of that secondary. You never know when we're going to need him. But if we can keep him on the bench and have him in a, reserve role, that's perfect. That's where he belongs. Dorrance Armstrong, Jr., 38 snaps, 69%. Deron Payne, 37 snaps. I thought this was one of Deron's best performances of the season, and I think it will bear itself out when we watch the film. I thought he was disruptive. I thought he got pressure. I thought he was around the football. He should have had a sack. He let Will Levis get out of his grasp, but he ended up getting credit for a half a sack because he touched him, grabbed him, and then Will Levis kind of stumbled away from him, and then somebody else got a piece of him on the way down. And I didn't think they were going to give Deron a half of that sack. I thought they were going to give the whole sack to that other individual, whomever it was. Might have been like Cleveland Farrell or someone else. But they gave Deron half a sack. He deserved it. He should have gotten the full sack. But I thought this was one of his better performances this season. Johnny Newton, 26 snaps. Really didn't hear much from him in this game. 47%. Percy Butler, 21%. 21 snaps rather, 38%. A guy that just continues to win me over. I've been day one. First of all, he's a Golden Domer. So, I'm very well versed in the game of Sheldon Day. But week one, when he had to play because Johnny Newton wasn't ready to versus Tampa Bay, Sheldon Day, you could argue, was one of the best defensive linemen in that game. He was very impressive. And every time he's played this season, he's been very impressive. And he's drawn the most holding penalties of any defensive lineman this season. He drew another one in this game. I love Sheldon Day. Love Sheldon Day. 20 snaps for him. Cleveland Farrell, 16 snaps for him defensively. Carl Davis, we got to talk about this, and we'll do it at some point later on in this week. For Darian Mathis, a healthy scratch. Carl Davis was said to have earned the right to be active. DQ talks and preaches about competition, and he felt like Carl Davis earned the right to be up this week, and Fedarian was a healthy scratch. On the heels of a former first-round pick of just last year's draft being cut, not being on the field, and a healthy scratch as a second-round pick seems a bit ominous. We'll talk about that later on in the week. Jalen Holmes, 12 plays, 22%. Michael Davis, 8 snaps. And John Baptiste, 12 snaps for him as well. So DQ spoke at his presser, Victory Monday presser, and it was a great press conference because of what it signified. He started off the press conference by talking about the tank being on E. Like, this was a tired, battered, and bruised team, and not just physically, mentally as well. And we've seen it, right? We talked about this. We talked about the quick turnaround against Philadelphia and this team being exhausted. We talked about this team being tired against Dallas, needing this break and limping into this bye week. And he said he was so proud of the effort that they were able to give. And he said sometimes, you're able to tap into a reserve that you don't even know that you have. And that's clearly what they were able to do here against Tennessee. But this bye is mandatory at this point. DQ, I love that he made it a point of emphasis to talk about not talking about the bye week, right? Like I told you guys this last week. I'm not big on making excuses. You guys know this. I don't like blaming the officials, even when they are to blame, like the Steelers game. They weren't good in that game, particularly on that spot. But we had opportunities in that game that we didn't seize, right? I don't like blaming the officials. I don't like making excuses. I don't want to talk about things that we didn't do in the offseason. What is that going to do for us now, right? This is the situation. This is the roster we have. This is who we are. Figure it out, right? I'm all about solutions. I'm solution-based, not problem-based. Identify the problem. Now, what's the solution? Okay. I don't want to dwell over the problem. That's not going to solve it, right? DQ said, look, we got a late bye. That's the problem. What's the solution? Let's not talk about it because nobody cares. Nobody cares that your bye is in week 14. Other teams have week 14 byes, right? You're not the only one. But guess what? Nobody cares that your bye is in week 14. That's the straw that you drew. When the schedule was released, you drew the week 14 bye. Deal with it. So instead of harping on it, lamenting it, he said, I didn't even bring it up. We just talked about, continuing to focus on the task at hand. The most important fight is the one that we're in. And then, but now that we're here at the bye, damn it, we needed this bye. I love that approach, right? He talked about this game, the significance of it, Bobby Wagner's speech, we all have heard about that. That was big. And the veteran leadership, what those guys have brought to the table, this is when you need to tap into those guys and their experience and their leadership. And he said it was huge. He talked about Jaden's ability to take care of the football. He says he makes strong decisions. Like, it's his decision-making that allows us to be in every ball game because we trust Five with the ball in his hands and what he's going to do with it. And I think we've seen that already throughout the course of the season. He's rarely going to put the ball in harm's way. He'll be cautious, overly cautious before and we watched the game on Monday Night Football with the Browns and Jameis Winston and his turnovers in that game. And it's such a refreshing thing. We watched Sam Howell last year turn it over, 20 times interception-wise? Probably had another 4 or 5 fumbles on the season, but the interceptions were big. Like, Taylor Heineke, same deal. We've dealt with guys that had a penchant for turning it over. And it's just refreshing to see a guy take care of the football, right? Make smart decisions and give you a chance. He talked about the execution at the end of the first half offensively. He was not a fan of it. Neither was I. Now, it was going to be tough, and he mentioned that. He's like, look, it wasn't a lot of time. I think it was like 20 seconds left. But we had all 3 timeouts. And with this offense and sometimes it being explosive, whether it's Jaden's legs, his ability to escape the pocket and make something happen, or just getting it to Terry, right? Anything could happen. So you want to attack downfield in that situation. And when we checked it down, Luke McCaffrey, who was chipping on that play, you pretty much killed all opportunity to try to get something done. So, and I would take it a step further and say that our defensive 2-minute defense wasn't great, which we gave up the touchdown right before the half. We had like 3 different opportunities, including a 3rd and like 14 to get off the field, and we couldn't do it. So I would say both offensively and defensively, the 2-minute wasn't great for us. And we've been really good in that situation. Situationally, we've been excellent in the 2-minute this season, both on the offensive and defensive sides, but mainly the offensive side. Less defensive, more offensive. But here in the last couple of weeks, was disappointed in what we did against Dallas. And then we ended up turning around and then giving up the field goal before the half. We didn't score against Dallas, which was a shame because Jaden ran out of bounds 3 plays in a row after getting that drive going and looked like we were about to do what we normally do, which is score before the half. We then kicked it to Dallas, pinned them deep, and then gave up the deep ball for the field goal. And obviously that had a huge impact on the game and the final score. This week, give up the touchdown, you get a limited amount of time, still got all 3 of your timeouts, but wasn't able to do something. He wasn't really happy with that execution. He talked about that. He talked about the line of, spending the time that you need as a staff to come out of that bye guns a-blazing, and also needing to decompress and get away yourself. The players are going to get away, right? They're done. They come in, get their treatment, and then they're away for the week, and they're just going to rest, right? Do whatever it is they want to do, go back. A lot of these guys are going to be on the sidelines at their alma maters. We got a lot of championship games this week or whatever. So if your team's playing in a championship game, you're going to see them on the sidelines, more likely than not this week. Because that's just how it goes. Guys go back to school, spend some time at the campus. A lot of guys go home, spend time with family. It is the holiday season. So the players are going to get away, but the coaching staff, not necessarily the same for them. They got to self-scout. They got to go over this film. They got to start preparing for New Orleans. And so DQ's like, there's a fine line of us, getting our ducks lined up in a row to get ready for the Saints, and self-scouting ourselves and getting into a position where we can be better moving forward for the remainder of the season, but also getting away and recharging our own batteries, which is important. So he talked about that as well. And talked about Chris Rodriguez. We've talked about him, and DQ's talked about him in the past about being selfless. He talked about guys sacrificing for the greater good, the brotherhood, all of that good stuff. And he said that Chris Rodriguez is one of the prime examples. He said that earlier in the season when Rodriguez had the big game against the Giants to finish as the closer there. He said that, it's been, tough on Chris. He got released here 2 weeks ago to make space for some roster moves that had to happen. And, Chris Rodriguez after the game said that Brian Robinson Jr. was really instrumental in keeping his head up. And DQ talked about how important it was to hear Chris Rodriguez pretty much express to them, hey, I want to be here. Despite being cut, despite having an opportunity to go elsewhere. We've seen guys be, in their feelings after getting cut, like KJ Henry. He was in his feelings. He bolted. He could have been back here on the practice squad, but he went to Cincinnati. Then he ended up in Dallas. He's in Dallas now, I believe. Like, he was in his feelings, right? And I'm not mad at the guy for being in his feelings for getting cut, right? But Chris Rodriguez was like, no, I want to be here. I want to be a part of this. And they said, hearing that from him, and the feeling was mutual. It was, the only reason they did what they had to do was because of other guys getting injured and situations having to happen that forced them to have to make roster adjustments. And so they wanted him to remain here, and you saw him step up when the opportunity presented itself. And I think he's playing his way into being a fixture on this roster down the stretch. Even when we get fully healthy at the running back position, it's hard because Jeremy McNichols is such a big part of the special teams game. They trust him as a runner. They trust him in pass protection. And so I don't know. I can't see them having 4 running backs up. But Chris Rodriguez is I think he's carving out a niche for himself. I'll just say that. And then lastly, DQ talked about the finish of the season, and he's like, the media is gonna do the thing where you guys talk about the playoff push in these final 4 games. I'm gonna talk about us being at base camp. He's like, we're no longer at the very beginning, but we are at base camp, and we are on a step-to-step basis now. So we're not talking about the final 4 games of the season. That's too big of a picture. We just want to narrow the focus to New Orleans, right? That's what they did this week against Tennessee. And we want to narrow the focus to New Orleans, and then after that, narrow the focus to Philadelphia. And, when it's all said and done, then you take a step back and assess what you've done and then move forward from there. But it's a 1 week at a time approach, and I love that approach. That's the approach I'm taking, right? I started to do the big picture thing. I got out of pocket. I started talking about, first round bye, winning the division, finishing the season, winners of 6 straight, all that craziness that was coming out of my mouth. And I got humbled quick. So now I'm refocusing to just 1 game at a time. I don't want to talk about Philadelphia. I don't want to talk about Atlanta. I don't want to talk about Dallas the second time. I just want to talk about New Orleans. And that's what DQ's on, essentially. Going back to the basics, which is the most important fight is the one that we're in, right? And the Saints are going to be the most important fight because that's the one that we're going to currently be in. So that was DQ in a nutshell. And that essentially is going to do it for me, your man Louie T, on this Victory Monday. We got some discussions to have, right? I can't wait to watch the film because the offensive line was extraordinary. I want to see if Brandon Coleman looked good in this game. Also, I want to see what Cornelius Lucas did, because I think there may be a conversation to be had. This is Tell the Truth Monday, right? While we're at it, right? More so Victory Monday than Tell the Truth Monday. But if we're at it, maybe, just maybe, part of the success of the run game was Cornelius Lucas being in the lineup for Andrew Wiley. I'm a big proponent of Luke being in the lineup. We've advocated for him starting at right tackle for 2 years now, right? And for whatever reason, the last regime didn't want to put him in at right tackle. This regime doesn't want to take Wiley out of the lineup. Obviously, there was a bond and there is a connection between Wiley and Cosme on that right side, but better is better. I'm trying to put my 5 best offensive linemen in the field, and I think Cornelius Lucas is one of our 5 best offensive linemen. I've said that before. I'll say it again. So maybe that's something that needs to be said. They're not going to bench Andrew Wiley. When he's healthy, that's his spot. So I don't really want to make too much of it, but it is something to talk about. Also, I made mention on Friday's show about, Dan Quinn with a hot finish to the season could get back into Coach of the Year. Joe Buck said some pretty irresponsible things on Monday. We'll tap into that later on in the week. And I talked about Jaden. I led off the show on Friday with Jaden having a chance to reassert himself in terms of dominance, the favorite, to reestablish himself from a momentum standpoint as the offensive rookie of the year. I think he did that on Sunday. And then you couple that with Bo Nix's performance on Monday Night Football, I think he has reestablished himself as the clear-cut favorite to be offensive rookie of the year. But we'll talk about those things a little bit later on down the line in the week. But enjoy this bye week. I know I am, and I look forward to chopping it up with you guys. Hopefully, we'll have some other things to talk about on the Commanders Kings channel. Still ironing out some things there, but be on the lookout for that as well. But in any event, that's going to do it for me, your man Louie T, here on Commanders Nightly News. I look forward to chopping it up with you. Until next time, you guys have a good one. Take care. See you next time.
Here comes the diesel. Here comes the diesel. There's the snap, hand to Riggins. Good hole. He's got the first down to the 40. He's gone.